Welcome back, everyone. Sometimes we make a decision that looks for a while good and positive. After some time, however, the decision returns more negative consequences. With the help of second-order thinking, we can think before we make a decision or take an action about possible consequences. The following quote by the American science fiction author Frédéric Bastiat captures the mental model of second-order thinking best. A good science fiction story should be able to predict not the automobile, but the traffic jam, by Frédéric Bastiat. The model of second-order thinking involves not just considering the immediate or direct consequences of a decision or action, which we call here the first-order consequences, but it also involves considering the potential consequences which may arise following the first-order consequences, which we call here the second-order consequences. The second-order thinking can help us to avoid possible negative outcomes, which we just don't see when we only focus on the first-order consequences. The mental model is called second-order thinking, but what it really means is second-order, third-order, fourth-order, and so on thinking. We call this here the nth-order thinking. In other words, Frédéric Bastiat, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, who was a French economist, talks in his essay That Which Is Seen and That Which Is Not Seen about the difference between people who in his case were economists, but I would say this applies to all kinds of domains, who can think one step ahead and those who can't. Between a good and a bad economist, this constitutes the whole difference. The one takes account of the visible effect, the other takes account both of the effects which are seen and also of those which it is necessary to foresee. Now this difference is enormous, for it almost always happens that when the immediate consequence is favorable, the ultimate consequences are fatal, and the converse. Hence it follows that the bad economist pursues a small present good which will be followed by a great evil to come, while the true economist pursues a great good to come at the risk of a small present evil, by Frédéric Bastiat. In an extreme simplified form, fast food from a pleasure perspective, the first order consequences of eating fast food is probably good, but the second and the fourth, the nth order consequences, are probably not good. The other way around, when we eat salad or broccoli, which is for many probably a little pain to eat in the beginning, so the first order consequences, from the perspective of pleasure of course, is maybe negative, but the nth order consequences are positive. Second order thinking requires much more work than first order thinking. It is asking ourselves many questions about a certain decision or an action. For an example, when I do the second order thinking by myself, I take the following steps. First, take the time to sit back and think, starting with the first order consequences. Second, ask and then what for each first order consequence. That's how we figure out the nth order consequences. Keep repeating the question. And third, considering the aspects of time. Second order consequences, or nth order consequences in general, probably show much later after the first order consequences. A big advantage of second order thinking is that we are forced to think long term. It could happen that in the process of second order thinking, we discover a consequence which is unacceptable for us, which is like too negative. And then we can re-evaluate the decision or action we are about to take, because it's maybe too risky in the first place, even if the negative, unacceptable consequence has a low probability to occur, but still, maybe it has such a drastic impact that we are not willing to make this decision or take this action in the first place. I notice when I do this kind of thinking by myself that I see causalities where there are probably none, and I'm naturally trying to predict. But reality is complex and foggy. We just can't predict or anticipate with certainty. Just because we can think about some nth order consequences that they probably could appear, doesn't mean that they really appear in the future. Some situations we can judge more likely to happen as others. For example, when we are constantly smoking, there is a high probability of fatal nth order consequences. On the other side, when we are thinking about a job change, for example, we can think about all the nth order consequences, but somehow we are not so sure if our thought about consequences will really appear. Our first example is to frequently take painkillers. And as a disclaimer, this is no health advice, only for illustration purposes. Our decision or action is to frequently take painkillers for temporary pain relief. In our example, we take the painkiller against headaches. The first order consequence could look like that the pain, in our example the headache, is relief and that we feel better. The second order consequences could look like the following. Possibly we develop a medication tolerance. That means that we're needing a higher dose of painkillers for the same pain relief. Second, we could develop a dependency. Third, we could mask underlying issues because we have some pain and we are just treating the symptom and not the root of the problem. And fourth, we could enjoy better sleep because of our having less pain, we automatically are more comfortable and this leads to better sleep. The third order consequences could include health risks through long-term use. When we frequently take painkillers for a long time, it can cause damage to our organs. Another third order consequence could still be that we neglect underlying issues. In this example, a shoemaker's child was careless and broke his window. People around the shoemaker are telling him that this is really good because he has to spend money to repair it, so spend money for the glass repairman, and this brings money in the economy and the money is circulating around. Frédéric Bastiat argues that this is only what we see. It doesn't involve or doesn't include what we are not seeing. Suppose it costs 6 francs to repair the damage, and you say that the accident brings 6 francs to the glacier's trade, that it encourages that trade to the amount of 6 francs. I grant it. I have not a word to say against it. You reason justly. The glacier comes, performs his task, receives his 6 francs, rubs his hands, and in his heart blesses the careless child. All this is that which is seen. It is not seen that as our shopkeeper has spent 6 francs upon one thing, he cannot spend them upon another. It is not seen that if he had not had a window to replace, he would, perhaps, have replaced his old shoes or added another book to his library. In short, he would have employed his 6 francs in some way, which this accident has prevented, by Frédéric Bastiat. In this case, from the perspective of the people around the shoemaker, the first order consequence was positive. The money was spent wisely to the glass repairman. But what no one saw is the second order consequence, that now the shoemaker is left with less money, which he could not spend on other things. The next time we are faced with a big decision, we could take our time and think through some possible consequences. To not just focus on the first order consequences or not to just focus on the consequences which we immediately see. This costs time, energy and willpower, but I would say this is totally worth the cost. Thank you so much for watching this video today, and as always, I wish you a fantastic day.